Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to Movie Goodness, where we examine life through cinema here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and thank you all for joining me on today's episode. Today's episode is a very, very special episode. This is an episode that part of me didn't want to do because it's kind of somber, but at the same time, you got to give your flowers. We're going to discuss an individual who passed away just this past week at the ripe young age of 93 years old. Yes, we're talking about none other than James Earl Jones. This is his tribute show for this dynamic, powerful actor who has given us such an amazing filmography throughout his career. And not only film, he excelled in television. He excelled on Broadway. He excelled in every aspect of his career. This was one of the greatest actors of all time. And I think, as much as people are giving him his flowers, which is rightfully deserved, I don't think we ever talked about James Earl Jones being as one of the greats. We always liked James Earl Jones. Everybody fully acknowledged how great of an actor he is. But when people, do their little Mount Rushmore of actors, you never hear James Earl Jones' name. At least I haven't. I haven't heard his name bandied about. And that includes me. And, after his passing and after I decided, I'm going to dedicate this episode to him and doing research on him and looking at his filmography, I was like, man, I can't believe, I haven't put him up there because he has so many memorable performances. Of course, everybody and they mama know that he was the voice of probably the greatest villain in all of media. I don't care if we talking movies, television, comic books, novels, whatever. There was no greater villain than Darth Vader from the Star Wars films. Darth Vader is one of those characters that, transcends the genre. Because everybody know who Darth Vader is. And he provided the voice of Darth Vader. And for years, being as though when I came along, Star Wars was already here. I came along, about 4 or 5 years after the first Star Wars came out. And so I didn't jump on board until Empire. And so when Empire came around and I'm listening to this voice and this big booming voice coming out of this mask, it was like, man, who is this cat? And I remember my dad was the one who told me, that's a black man. I'm like, well, I know the mask is black. I know the whole costume he's wearing is black, but is a black man underneath it? And at the time, my dad was like, yeah, that's a black man. That's James Earl Jones. And I'm like, really? I was like, well, Luke is white. That don't add up to me. His mama was black. I was all confused. I was little. I was young. I didn't know. And my dad, he didn't know that he was just doing the voice. But I vaguely remember when Return of the Jedi came out. And we all know spoilers, of course. When he dies at the end, or dying at the end, and he asks Luke to take off his mask, he wants to see his son with his real eyes, and he takes off the mask. I'm anticipating to see James Earl Jones, and they took off the mask, and it was this white man. I'm like, wait, this don't add up. Something ain't right here, And that's when I found out that he actually did the voice of Darth Vader, but it didn't matter. I didn't care. He will always be known as Darth Vader to me, even though another actor portrayed him in the suit. but it's all good. But speaking of voices, he was a mainstay in my childhood again when he hit us with Mufasa from The Lion King. And everybody cried when Mufasa died in The Lion King, you know, and his voice fit that. He was a Lion King. He just had the voice for that. And speaking of kings, when he was King Jaffe Joffer in Coming to America, you know, it was just so many memorable performances, you know, and we're gonna go through them all. We're not gonna do one film and review like I normally do on Movie Goodness. This man deserves all his films to be acknowledged here today, and we're gonna acknowledge them, and we're not gonna review them. We're just gonna acknowledge them and give him his proper due. Just a little peek behind the curtain, letting everybody know that send prayers to here in Louisiana, because as the time of the recording of this episode, we have a hurricane about to hit in the next 12, 15 hours. I don't know, whenever it decides to hit. But yeah, so I'm hurrying up and trying to get this episode out, because you know when a hurricane hits, we lose power, and going by the last few hurricanes, we don't have power for like a week or two. So I wanted to get this episode out before, you know, all the hecticness takes place. Hopefully it doesn't happen this go around. I hope that after this I think Francine does her business, that, you know, everything will be all right, because according to the meteorologist, it's not going to be a devastating storm as Ida was a couple of years ago, or Zeta was, and of course Katrina. It's not going to be that bad, and it's supposed to be a fast-moving storm, and so hopefully it's not as damaging and destructive as those were. And so just keep us in your thoughts and your prayers here in Louisiana, and whoever else is affected by this storm. But I just wanted to get this episode out, and that just shows my love and dedication to all of you, that even though I should be packing up and leaving right now, I'm deciding to do this episode for all of you. And this is pretty much my therapy, though. Instead of going crazy sitting there watching the news and the weather for the next 10, 12 hours, you know, pulling my hair out that I don't have, I'd rather sit here and talk to all of you. And so there you go. And so hopefully this episode will find me and everybody else here in Louisiana upright and good. And so back to the business at hand, and that is, of course, James Earl Jones. And James Earl Jones, he was born on January the 17th, 1931, people. 1931, and he passed away on September the 9th of 2024. He was an American actor, of course. He is one of the few. Now, not too many performers have this distinction. He is an EGOT. Now, if you don't know what an EGOT is, an EGOT, if I'm saying it right, that is a performer who has won an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony. That is rare. Not too many performers have won the big four, or all four, and he has pulled it off. He was inducted into the American Theater Hall of Fame in 1985. He was honored with the National Medal of Arts in 1992, Kennedy Center Honors in 2002, the Screen Actors Guild Life Achievement Award in 2009, and the Academy Honorary Award in 2011. James Earl Jones was born in Mississippi, and not too far from where my folks grew up from. I think it's called Archer Butler. Archer Butler is northern Mississippi, and his mother was a teacher and a maid, and his father was a boxer, a butler, and a chauffeur. His father left the family shortly after his birth, and he later became a stage and screen actor himself. Robert Earl Jones. That's, of course, was James Earl Jones' father. And if you ever seen pictures of him, they look exactly like that's him. That's there's no dispute. There's no need to go on Maury. That's you the daddy. Um, even though he left before he was born, so he never really knew his father, of course. But James Earl and his father did reconcile in the 1950s. They did come together, and they, I guess you could say, buried the hatchet. At least James Earl Jones did. He buried the hatchet, and they developed a relationship. And that's a beautiful thing, I think. That is an awesome thing, because I know that's a hard pill to swallow. Because around that time, he was in his 20s, and you'd have been through it all. Been to puberty, you've been through high school, you've been to college, and all this here, and now here's, hey, son, that's that's weird, but I'm glad that he was able to move past it. But before all that, at the age of 5, James Earl he was raised by his maternal grandparents on a farm in Michigan, and they had moved there from Mississippi during the Great Migration. But James Earl, he found this transition of living difficult and traumatic. It was hard for him to cope, and because of this, he developed a stutter. And people don't understand what mental health do. Mental health can really affect your physical health as well. And this is what happened. He developed this severe stutter. I mean, it was so bad. He didn't speak. He actually refused to talk because it was so bad, and he was embarrassed by it. He couldn't talk. He had said in an interview once that, I was a stutterer. I couldn't talk. And so my first year of school was my first mute year. And then those mute years continued until I got to high school. He credited his math teacher, Donald Crouch, who discovered he had a gift for writing poetry, with helping him in his silence. Crouch urged him to, challenge himself and to speak through writing poetry and reading poetry out loud in class. And so this really helped him to break free. And it took high school till he was able to break out and actually speak. And poetry was a way, was a form of outlet, I should say, to kind of break through this little disability that he had. And I thought that is powerful stuff right there. After graduating high school, he went on to attend at the University of Michigan, where he was initially a pre-med major. He joined the Reserve Officers Training Corps and excelled. He felt comfortable within the structure of the military environment and enjoyed the camaraderie with his fellow comrades, or cadets, not comrades. They weren't in Russia. And after his junior year, he focused on drama with the thought of doing something he enjoyed before. At least he assumed, and he would have to go off to fight in the Korean War. James Earl Jones graduated from University of Michigan in 1955 with a bachelor's in arts, majoring in drama. Now, his military career, as I said, as the war intensified in Korea, he was deployed as soon as he received his commission as the second lieutenant. While he waited for his orders, he worked on a stage crew and acted at this theater in Michigan. He did eventually get called over to the Korean War, but by the time he was called, the war was pretty much wrapping up, if you will. But he did go to several forts for training, additional training, until he was discharged after being promoted to first lieutenant. After being discharged, he moved to New York, where he studied American theater wing and worked as a janitor to support himself. Now we're going to go into his filmography. We're going to go through every film that he was a part of. And I will say that this is where my head really blew open when I was studying for this show. I was like, man, I did not realize this man has such a storied career, such a stellar career. And nobody considers him one of the GOATs. It's mind boggling to me. But that's neither here or there. Let's start off with his first film, the first film that he was ever a part of, and that was in 1964 with Dr. Strangelove. In 1967, The Comedians. In 1970, he starred in two films, End of the Road and The Great White Hope, which he was in the stage play of 2 years earlier, which he was nominated for a Tony Award. I believe he won a Tony Award for that performance. And the film adaptation in 1970, where he was nominated for an Academy Award for his performance in that same role. He didn't win, but he was nominated. In 1972, he starred in or was a part of The Man. In 1974, Claudette. In 1976, he was in not one, not two, not three, but four films. The River Niger, The Bengal Long Traveling All-Stars, and Motor Kings. I love that movie. That was, I think, Richard Pryor. And who else was in that movie? Why am I blanking? But anyways, yeah, he was a part of that. The Swashbuckler and Deadly Hero. In 1977, this is where it blew up. He starred in 5 films in 1977. The Greatest, where he portrayed Malcolm X in that film. And we all know and love Star Wars, where he portrayed Darth Vader. And also in 1977, The Exorcist 2, the worst Exorcist film there was. There is. Well, until that last one. But it's a close. And also the last remake of Bogas and a piece of the action. In 1980, he reprised the role of Darth Vader in The Empire Strikes Back. In 1982, this is where I first came to know James Earl Jones. And it was a film that came out in 1982. He did 3 films, but one of them is the one where I grew to know who James Earl Jones was, because this was my first time ever seeing him, due to my age at the time. The Flight of the Dragons, Conan the Barbarian, and Blood Tide. It was Conan the Barbarian, where he played the villain in that film. In one of the creepiest villains of all time. Now, granted, he's played Darth Vader twice up to this point, but this is probably the most disturbing villain I ever seen him play in Conan the Barbarian. Of course, that movie was crazy within its own right, with Arnold Schwarzenegger, but he stood toe-to-toe with Schwarzenegger and made Schwarzenegger look like nothing. And I don't think we've ever seen a movie where Arnold Schwarzenegger looked as puny. And I'm not talking size-wise, but I mean like gravitas-wise on screen. But James Earl Jones did it in that film. In 1984, for a third time, he reprised the role as Darth Vader in Return of the Jedi. In 1985, City Limits. In 1986, he starred in a film, co-starred in a film that is probably, if they remake, well, I'm not going to say if they remade it, they will never remake this film this day and age. And it is Soul Man, where he played a professor at this college. The Soul Man is the movie where C. Thomas Howell wears blackface to get into Harvard, to get into the African, I think it was an African American scholarship. And so he had to fake being black to get the scholarship to go to Harvard. It was a comedy, by the way, and it's no way that this movie would be made today. But yes, James Earl Jones was in that film. He played the professor in that film. He also in 1986 um, played one of the weirdest characters I think in his career in the film Adam Quantumay in the Lost City of Gold. This was a Indiana Jones ripoff film, and it was just weird. He was just weird in that movie. That whole movie was weird, but he was weirder in it. In 1987, he starred in 4 films: Gardens of Stone, My Little Girl, Pinocchio and the Empire of the Night, and Maid One. In 1988, he gave us King Jaffe Joffa in Coming to America. And I don't know what it is. It's something about that movie, about, at least about his character, that was refreshing to me because it was like my first time seeing him in an actual comedy that I enjoyed, that he actually hit. He was funny. He was funnier than Eddie Murphy in this movie. I just love him in this film. The sequel, not so much, but we haven't gotten to that yet. In 1989, he's starred in 3 films, 2 of which I would say are cult classic. One is a classic, another one is a cult classic. Um, Three Fugitives, which is not neither one of those, but he was in that. But he was also in Field of Dreams and Best of the Best. Best of the Best is a cult classic. If you've ever seen that movie, I think Everett Roberts in it. Chris Penn, who's Sean Penn brother, he was in it, and it's the cheesiest movie of all time. It is a pure 80s cheese fest, but it's so satisfying. For some strange reason, it is a cult classic. But the true classic is Field of Dreams. Like I said, if you didn't cry, if you weren't moved in some type of way watching Field of Dreams, you don't have a soul. Put a mirror under your nose and see if there's any breath in you. I mean, this movie will rip you out, especially if you are close to your father and your father passed away or whatever, or any loved one really. It don't have to be a father. It's just specifically a father because of this film. But that will rip you up, man. And in a good way. It's joyous tears. It's not like, oh, it's depressing. It's not that. It's so beautifully made. I love that movie. And I'm not a baseball nut, but I love that movie. And James Earl Jones, his character was so good. He was so good in that movie. In 1990, he starred in 4 films. If you notice a pattern, James Earl Jones was a working man. He stayed busy. 3 to 4 films a year, easily. He worked. In 1990, he co-starred in Convicts, The Hunt for Red October, The Ambulance, Grim Fairy Tales. The memorable one for me in 1990 was The Hunt for Red October. He played Admiral James Greer, and this was the first Jack Ryan film that I think they made, and that was with Alec Baldwin. They went on to make about 3 of them with Harrison Ford, and one with Ben Affleck. I think one with Chris Pine. John Krasinski had a TV show. They've been trying to hit this Jack Ryan thing out the park for the longest time. But the best one to me was The Hunt for Red October. I love that movie, and James Earl Jones as the Admiral was so powerful. I mean, it was just. I know it seems like typecasting, but I mean, he just has that presence. You know what I'm saying? But he went on to play that character a couple of more times, I believe, with Harrison Ford. But anyways, in 1991, he starred in 2 films, Scorchers and True Identity. In 1992, like I said, he reprised his role as Admiral James Greer in Patriot Games. Also starred in Sneakers, which was a pretty good movie, a real sneaky good movie from the 90s, if you haven't checked that out. In 1993, he starred in five films: Dream Rider, Summersby, The Sandlot, Excessive Force, and yes, people, Meteor Man. uh, The Sandlot. Um, the Sandlot is once again a cult classic. His character as the blind man over the junkyard, I believe, with the dog, and they're trying to retrieve the ball out of that yard, and it come to find out that he used to play baseball because the ball that they hit. Well, anyway, look, go watch The Sandlot, but it's I like his character in that film. But the Meteor Man, people, the Meteor Man is one of those hidden gems. You know, it is a pure guilty pleasure. That's from Robert Townsend, and uh, I guess you could say he's the unofficial first black superhero that we ever got on screen. I don't know. I'll have to do some research, but I believe so. But I remember running to the theater when that came out because it had so many stars in that movie. I think Luther Vandross was in it, and uh, countless others. I don't know why Luther Vandross sticks in my mind, but yeah, it was it's a cheesy movie, but I love it. You know, it's one of those movies that if they decide they want to remake it, I'm there. Take my money. I would love to go see that again. But James Earl Jones, James Earl Jones in this film, he wore a flat top toupee and was trying to be hip. It was, I don't know what if I don't know. He just looked like he was having fun. And when he was having fun, I was having fun with him. But yeah, the Meteor Man, man. I got to check that out. It's been a minute since I checked that out. I got to check that out. It's been a while. In 1994, he had a cameo in The Naked Gun 33 and a Third, The Final Insult, Clean Slate, and of course, Clear and Present Danger, as he reprised his role yet again as Admiral James Greer in the Jack Ryan films, and The Lion King as Mufasa. That's the one that sticks out, people. That's the one that lives on in infamy. That is the the creme de la creme. There's no other. I know they have a Mufasa film coming out in a few months. I think around Christmas, and it looks good. I can't wait to see it. But James Earl Jones, of course, he wasn't a part of it. They have a new actor because it's supposed to be like a prequel, and before he became the king. So there's a new voice actor providing the voice, of course, and that kind of turned me off. To be 100% honest with you, I, I wasn't 100% with it, but I'm willing to give it a shot. I am willing to give it a shot, and I want to see how this other actor. I think the problem is I'm gonna go in trying to compare his voice to James Earl Jones' voice, and that's not fair to whoever it is providing the voice of Mufasa in that film, because nobody can do James Earl Jones. Nobody, and definitely can't do Mufasa. So this is you just got to go into it with a different mindset. Anyways, moving on to 1995, where James Earl Jones starred in 3 films: Jefferson in Paris, Cry, The Beloved Country, and Judge Dredd. And now you may ask yourself, he was in Judge Dredd, the one with Sylvester Stallone? Technically, no, but he was the narrator in that film of that film, and it wasn't through the whole film. I think it was the opening narration of that movie. It's been a while since I watched that one. The real good Dredd is Dredd, the one with Carl Urban. That's fire. But yes, he did the narration in the beginning of Judge Dredd. In 1996, he starred in 2 films: A Family Thing and Good Luck. In 1997, Casper, A Spirited Beginning, and Game Related. And you know what? That was one of the points I wanted to make. I got to check by this because I saw Game Related maybe twice in my life, and I cannot recall James Earl Jones being in that movie. I gotta go back and watch it. When I was doing the notes for this show, I was like, wait, he was in Game Related. That's the film with Tupac, and I don't recall, and I don't know why I'm blanking on it, and so I got to go back and watch it again. But yes, he was in Game Related in 1998. He was in two films as well, Primary Colors, and he reprised the role of Mufasa in The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride. I know a lot of people don't even know that there was a Lion King 2 because it was a direct-to-video release. But I think, yeah, it was a direct-to-video. I don't think it went to the theaters. But anyways, in 1999, he portrayed Martin Luther King Sr. in My Friend Martin, Undercover Angel. He played the judge. The Annihilation of Fish, and Fantasia 2000. In 2001, he co-starred in Finder's Fee. In 2005, he was back to his old ways with 3 films that year: Robots, where he provided a voice, The Sandlot 2, which I've never seen. I know it was a direct-to-video movie, but I've never seen it for some strange reason. But he returned for that role, and he also returned to the role that everybody pretty much know him from, Darth Vader, in Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. In 2006, he was in The Benchwarmers. Well, kind of. He was the voice of Darth Vader again in a little clip or whatever. But he was also in Click as an uncredited cameo. Scary Movie 4, he was the narrator. And in 2008, this was sneaky one of my favorite Martin Lawrence movies. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if you account it as a guilty pleasure or just something. I don't know what it is. Something about this movie I absolutely love. Welcome Home, Roscoe Jenkins. I love this movie. It is close to perfection to me. And I think one of the reasons is I see a lot of my family in Roscoe Jenkins' family. And it just resonates with me. But James Earl Jones plays the father in that film, Roscoe Jenkins Sr., I should say. In 2009, he co-starred in Quantum Quest and Jack and the Beanstalk. He played the giant. In 2011, he reprised his voice role as Darth Vader on Star Tours at Disney World. And 2013, Give Me Shelter. In 2014, The Angriest Man in Brooklyn, and Driving Miss Daisy, which was a stage production that he did in Australia that got a theatrical release. So just not to be confused, like, wait, I thought that was Morgan Freeman. Yes, Morgan Freeman was in the movie, but stage production that was released in theaters, I think in Australia. And so it counts as a theatrical film. And so that was released in 2014. In 2016, he reprised his role yet again as Darth Vader in Rogue One. In 2018, Warning Shot. In 2019, he reprised not one, but 2 roles. And if you want to count 2024, or at least 2021 as well, he reprised another one. Basically, the next 3 films, or his last 3 films, were films that he is best known for, that he went back to. Starting in 2019 with The Lion King, that quote-unquote live-action version that I couldn't stand. I hated that version. Not because it was bad, because it was the same movie as the original. It was an insult to my intelligence, I felt, because it was the exact same movie. But he did return to provide the voice of Mufasa. He also reprised his role as Darth Vader in The Rise of Skywalker, which is whatever. But in 2021, he returned to the role of King Jaffe Joffer in his final film role in coming to America. And I hate that that was his final role because that was horrible. I hate that movie. I mean, they really poo-pooed on a classic film there. But those are his film roles. Just to touch in on some of his TV presence. Now, I mean, we'll be here till next year, going over all his TV appearances. But I can assure you, it's just as phenomenal as his filmography. In 1977, he starred in two TV projects, one being Roots, and he played Alex Haley, the author of that book, in that TV miniseries that angered a lot of black folks um when that came out. And he also was in Jesus of Nazareth, where he played Balthazar. In 1979, he reprised the role of Alex Haley in Roots: The Next Generation. In 19 He has appeared on Sesame Street several times. He was on Highway to Heaven, L.A. Law, The Simpsons, and one of the voices he provided on The Simpsons. He was on, I think, 3 episodes of The Simpsons, and he had a different voice every time. But one of the voices that he had is of one of the main characters. You want to guess who it is? No, it's not Bart. No, it's not it's not Homer. No, it's not Marge. It is Maggie Simpson, the baby. That's whenever she spoke, and she only spoke once, but it was James Earl Jones' voice that's, that came out of Maggie Simpson's mouth. He was also a voice on Garfield and Friends at one time. He was on Law and Order, Lois and Clark, The Adventures of Superman, 30 Rock from the Sun, Mad About You, Touched by an Angel, Frasier, Stargate, XG1, Homicide, Life on the Streets, the show Recess that was on Disney, the little cartoon. he was the voice of Santa Claus on that show, at least on one episode. Will and Grace, according to Jim, 2.5 Men, House. He was on House. I love that show too. The Big Bang Theory, Star Wars Rebels, where he reprised his role again at Darth Vader on 5 episodes of that. And in his final role, he returned as Darth Vader one last time in Obi-Wan Kenobi, which was on Disney Plus. And those are just a few of his TV appearances on shows. Now, he also did TV movies. He did a lot of TV movies, and once again, I'm not going to go through them all because there's so many. I mean, for real, he has about 3 pages full of filmography stuff. I mean, it is ridiculous, but he has so many. But there's one that I have to mention, just one out of the 30 films that TV movies that he did. One has been a Black History Month staple for so long. I remember this coming on almost every year since 1994. And it's always come on. And I know this story backwards and forwards because of James Earl Jones. And in 1994, he starred as Vernon Jones in The Road to Freedom, the Vernon Jones story. It came on repeat every February. I don't know what channel it was, but every Black History Month, it used to be on repeat. And it was just seared into my brain, and I'm pretty sure in a lot of other people's brains around that time for a few years until TV stopped doing it. Stopped showing Black History movies, which was messed up, man. TV hasn't been the same since, but that's a subject for another show. But yes, that is the filmography of one James Earl Jones. Just some little tidbits from his personal life. In 1968, James Earl Jones married actress and singer Julianne Marie, whom they met while performing as Othello in 1964. They didn't have any children together, and they ended up getting a divorce in 1972. But in 1982, he married actress Cecilia Hart, with whom they have a son together, Flynn. Hart had died of ovarian cancer on October 16th, 2016. In April of 2016, James Earl Jones spoke publicly for the first time in nearly 20 years about his long term health challenge with type 2 diabetes. He was diagnosed in the mid 90s after the doctor noticed he fell asleep while exercising at the gym. Uh, James Earl Jones, he was Roman Catholic. He had converted when he joined the military back in the day. James Earl Jones died in his home in New York on September the 9th, 2024, at the ripe young age of 93 years of age. In a statement, CNN said that Jones was the voice of CNN and our brand for many decades. That remarkable voice is just one of the many things the world will miss about James. James Earl Jones' alma mater, the University of Michigan, paid tribute to him by posting "We Are Michigan" video narrated by Jones on Twitter, or X. The NAACP, SAG-AFTRA, the Public Theater, and MLB also paid tribute to James Earl Jones. The Empire State Building in New York City, and this I'm gonna try to get through this without cracking up, and I mean I'm talking crying, uh, because I was so moved by this when I saw this that day. The Empire State Building in New York lit up to look like the iconic character of Darth Vader from Star Wars, in a tribute to James Earl Jones. It was so cool the way they did it. Oh my God, that was so cool. Vice President Kamala Harris praised Jones, writing, "He used his voice to challenge America's thinking on civil rights and race, and he continued to move our nation forward through his art." Former President Bill Clinton released a statement praising Jones as a brilliant actor who brought to life some of the most iconic characters ever. Actor Denzel Washington paid tribute to Jones, calling him his hero, adding, "I wasn't going to be as big as him. I wanted to sound like him. He was everything to me as a budding actor. He was who I wanted to be." And that is high praise coming from Denzel Washington. For Denzel Washington to say that I'm nowhere near what he is, that is wow. Numerous other members of the entertainment industry also paid tribute to Jones, including Kevin Costner, Mark Mark Hamill, who Mark Hamill's dedication to James Earl Jones was so perfect, and it was just two words, and it was so cool what he posted. He just said "R.I.P. Dad," and in case you don't know, Mark Hamill portrayed Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, and Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's dad. And so he just said, "R.I.P. Dad." I mean, that it gave me chills when I read that. I was like, man, that is so cool. Also paying tribute, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Barry Jenkins, Spike Lee, Viola Davis, Whoopi Goldberg, Courtney B. Vance, Octavia Spencer, Jeffrey Wright, Jamie Foxx, Rosario Dawson, Alec Baldwin, Danny DeVito, William Shatner, Disney CEO Bob Iger, Catherine Kennedy, who is the president of Lucasfilms, and George Lucas himself paid tribute to James Earl Jones when they learned of his passing. Following his death, the New York Times described Jones' career as a prodigious body of work and called him one of America's most versatile actors on stage, film, and television. The Hollywood Reporter referred to Jones as one of the most admired American actors of all time. The Guardian film critic Peter Bradshaw wrote, "Like Sidney Poitier or Harry Belafonte, Jones was an African American actor with a beautiful voice, which was the key to his dignity and self respect as a performer. It was how his characters rose above racism and cruelty and described Jones as movie royalty. In 2011, the Academy Award nominated actor Alec Baldwin called Jones one of the greatest actors in American history. Jones was recognized as a groundbreaker and pioneer for African Americans for his significant roles on stage and television. In 1965, Jones became one of the first African American actors in a continuing role on a daytime drama, acting in As the World Turns. Academy Award winning actress Viola Davis said that Jones' career reflects black excellence. Critic Clive Barnes said that Jones' theater roles were like a black avenging angel. In 2022, the Court Theater was renamed after James Earl Jones, becoming the second Broadway venue named after a black theatrical actor, or artist, I should say. The first being August Wilson Theater, named after the playwright August Wilson. The Court Theater was the same stage in which James Earl Jones made his Broadway debut in 1958. Yes, that was the life and legacy and career of James Earl Jones, one of the greatest actors of all time. You know, I'm trying to get away from saying one of the greatest black actors of all time or black this at all time. He's just one of the greatest of all time. You know what I'm saying? It goes without saying he's one of the best black actors of all time. When you call him the best actor of all time, is but I hate putting that label on him because it's not relegated to race, because he transcends race. Nobody cared that a black man's voice came out of Darth Vader. Nobody cared that a black man's voice came out of Mufasa. Nobody cared. They just loved the characters. And so he transcended the race of it all. But while transcending it, he gave it more relevance at the same time as being a black man in these roles, in these type of films that has been staples in pop culture throughout time, and will continue to be a staple in pop culture throughout time. But R.I.P. to a true king. I mean, this man has played a king. You know how many times he's been a king in films? He was a king in Coming to America. He was a king in The Lion King. Well, he was a lord in Star Wars, but you can pretty much give him a king. But he's just a king. He's a true king, and he will be missed, but his work will live on. We can always go back and watch all that he has done. He's left behind a true legacy. I mean, a legacy. And so there's no point of sitting here and moping and crying, because he lived a full life. I mean, 93 years old. I hope and pray that I can make it to 93 years old. That is a blessing and a half. So R.I.P. to James Earl Jones. I would like to know, what is your favorite James Earl Jones film? Which performance is your favorite? Which James Earl Jones performance sticks out to you, will always live on in infamy? It's crazy enough. I stated it earlier. It was Conan the Barbarian for me, because that was my first time seeing him. Even though he was in buku movies before that. Now, it wasn't my first time hearing him. Well, I don't even think he spoke in Conan the Barbarian. But he stuck out to me. That was my first time seeing him. And that's the one that sticks out. But that voice, oh my God, that voice in all the other films, it just, you knew. If you weren't paying attention, you had your back turned to the TV and he starts speaking, you would turn and look. He just had that voice. Oh man, we're gonna miss that voice. But I would love to know your favorite James Earl Jones performance. You can email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for this show on all social media platforms and leave comments there if you want. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Also, subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel on YouTube and like this video if you don't mind. Also, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to Movie Goodness here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this talk, this celebration of life, this honoring of a true icon, legend, James Earl Jones, R.I.P. to the King. Want you all to know that I love you, continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.